Thank you, Secretary Hayes, and I'm going to stand up here behind this podium so I can make notes of what you're saying, of things that I think are key. And Tracy Sharp works with our firm, and she's sitting down here, and she's much more than a court reporter or a stenographer, but she's going to be capturing things that you say today so that we know what we need to look at seriously as we move forward, considering all of the regions of the state. This is the seventh one of these we've done. And I have to tell you, from on a personal side, I've never been to Pikeville, Kentucky, but I was excited about coming over here. I've always heard about the scenic beauty, and I was excited. I thought, I wonder if we'll get to see Governor Patton in Pikeville, Kentucky. So when he walked in the door this morning, my day was made, and I think this is going to be a very good session because I'm excited about being in Pikeville, and I'm excited to see you, Governor Patton. You did a lot of good things for this state, and I had the privilege of working with you on a number of those things, and it's good to see you, and thanks for being here today. And thanks to all of you for being here. As I said, this is our seventh one of these. We're only doing 8. We've got one more in northern Kentucky, and that's tomorrow. I've been in Kentucky now this is almost 2 weeks. It's been a great place to spend 2 weeks, and it's been great hearing the different things and the different issues and the different concerns and the different ideas that people have about what they want to see in a strategic plan for economic development for the Commonwealth of Kentucky over the next 5 years. There are several ways to participate in this process other than just being at this meeting today, which we're thankful that you're here. There's an online survey for any resident of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, any citizen that wants to participate. There's a website. The name of this strategy, once it's completed, will be called Kentucky's Unbridled Future. So there is a website that's kentuckysunbridledfuture.com. There's a resident survey there that anyone can go to and complete so that anyone in the Commonwealth can participate in the process. We've also did a survey of business and industry, and we've had over 850 responses to that survey from business and industry all across the Commonwealth. We're excited about the opportunity to analyze that data as well. That is the most participation we've ever had from business and industry. So on any of these that we've ever done in the 6.5 years that we've been doing these types of things. On the resident survey so far, just to update you, we've had 550 responses so far. We did do a survey with Economic Development Strategic Partners of the Cabinet throughout the state. It was sent to a number of people. We've had 200 plus that have responded to that. We should finish today in about 2 hours. It depends on how much you want to talk. I know we allotted from 9 to 12. We won't keep you here from 9 to 12 just to keep you here from 9 to 12. We'll only keep you here to 12 if you've got a lot to say, and we're just not going to shut you down because we need to hear what you have to say. Go ahead. Right here. We don't have a clicker, so Tracy's taking notes and clicking at the same time. This process that we are doing, Kentucky's Unbridled Future, is going to be the name of the strategic plan that we're doing. It'll be a 5-year strategic plan. The process started with a kickoff meeting, our launch meeting, with key members of the cabinet. But then right after that, we did, just so that you are aware, a visioning session with the cabinet strategic partners, with some of the people that were at that meeting, which was a visioning session with just them in a room, similar to what we're doing today with you, was with the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers, the Secretary of the Arts, Tourism, Heritage Cabinet, the Secretary of the Energy Cabinet, the Governor's Office of Agriculture Policy, the President of KED, the Chair of the Commission on Military Affairs, the Science and Technology Cabinet, the Bio Alliance, and several others. That's just a sample of the people that we actually did a 2.5-hour session with. So we have been very inclusive of people that are in key positions in the Commonwealth of Kentucky that can impact economic development. This plan will include, we're going to review global, national, state, regional, and local trends, and we do that because as we are reviewing what the local trends and the national trends and the global trends are, we're looking at opportunities that will create wealth in the Commonwealth of Kentucky as we're doing that. We will also identify 10 targeted business opportunities or targeted sectors that the Commonwealth should focus on over the next 5 years. And within those sectors, we will give you niches that you should focus on within those 10 sectors that we give you. Realizing that the Commonwealth is very, very diverse. This is a diverse place, as most states are. It is a very diverse place, but we will have targets that will work and will be inclusive of all areas of the Commonwealth. We will also look at your unique assets and challenges, and you have them as every other place has them. But it's up to us to look at those and look at what the unique opportunities are or the unique assets are, but also what the challenges are, whatever they may be, positive or negative. And then once we have completed the strategies, we give you the recommended strategies and the actions after we've completed the strategic plan. Then we will work with the cabinet to develop an implementation plan. So this is not a 5-year strategy that's being developed that is going to sit on the shelf somewhere. This is a 5-year strategy that's going to be implemented. And in that implementation plan, there will be entities that are going to be responsible for implementing the strategies assigned on the implementation plan, as well as allocation of resources that will be needed, and realizing that resources are not increasing, that resources are more difficult today than they've ever been, but also with consideration of resources and assigning those on the implementation plan so that this Kentucky's Unbridled Future strategic plan will be implemented. Go ahead. As far as the timeline, I guess the most important thing is we will complete this strategy. We're in the field now doing these strategic visioning sessions. As I said, this is our 7th. The surveys will probably be closed out the end of next week, most likely. So you still have opportunities to go to that resident survey online if you would like to go there, or encourage your friends and neighbors to go there. We're in the process now of doing the competitive assessment, which we will complete the end of this month. And this week we complete the input sessions and the surveys. Then we'll work to start analyzing all the data, developing the strategic industry sectors to focus on, as well as strategies and recommendations that should be included in the strategy. Our goal is to have it completed by the end of October, 1st of November. As far as your participation today, please don't be shy. We've got 2 people with mics on either side of the room. Hopefully you'll just raise your hand, or if you just can't wait on the mic and you've got something you really want to say, just jump right out there and say it, and hopefully we'll be able to capture it. But it would be better for the process if you can talk into the mic. They will try to get to you very quickly. The first time you speak, if you would just introduce yourself and say who you're with, it would be helpful. The questions are to generate your comments related to the vision for economic development. They're more to precipitate discussion and just get what's important to you and what's important to you here in Eastern Kentucky as it relates to economic development. And with that, we're going to jump into an icebreaker question that is pretty simple, because I know there's a lot more than one thing, but as far as just one thing that makes Kentucky special to you, what would that be? And don't all talk at the same time. Yes, sir, Gene.
My name's Gene Davis, City Commissioner. The things that make Kentucky special to me is the people. There's no greater people in the country than people in Kentucky.
Good one. We've heard that a lot. What else? Right over here.
Good morning. I'm Trina Allen with the Office of Employment and Training. I don't know if I can speak about all of Kentucky because I don't work and live in all of Kentucky, but as far as our area, I appreciate that we have vision and then we follow through with it. So I'm very thankful and feel blessed to live in this region for those reasons.
Can you elaborate? Do you mind if I'm putting you on the spot if I say, can you elaborate on that vision just a minute?
On vision, I think, well, from being from the area, you can look and see the changes. You know, even our cut-through project that took vision and then it took follow-through. Even the expo center that you're in now, and even as you see the judicial center being built downtown, Pikeville College, the hospital. I mean, it's wonderful to have vision, but then you also have to make it happen. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that we live in an area that we have vision, we have people that are committed to seeing that through.
Thank you. And the University of Pikeville now.
Oh, yes. Oh, my dollar. I have to give you my dollar before I leave.
And a new athletic director starting Monday. I read that in the paper last night. U-Pike. I like that. U-Pike. What else? Yes, sir.
I'm Joe DePriest, Economic Development Director for Letcher County. I look at it as opportunity. Some people question that, but it's like the proverbial glass being half full or half empty. Eastern Kentucky's half full, and our job is to fill it up the rest of the way. So I feel like we got a lot of opportunities, depending on exactly where you're looking at and what area. And I agree that we've had some visions over the years, and I think some of them's been carried through and followed through on, and some of them have not made it all the way. So I think we got a great opportunity in Eastern Kentucky. And
I like the way you think. What else? One thing. Yes, sir. James?
To me, what's important to me is lifestyle. Lifestyle here is quite different than in a large metropolitan area. And to me, that's a real plus.
Okay. Anything else? Here we go. Here's two.
I'm Heidi Coddle, and I'm with the Kentucky Arts Council. I would say not only in Eastern Kentucky, but across the state, it's pride in our cultural heritage. I've lived in Eastern Kentucky and Central Kentucky, and working with the people that I do, I can see that with everybody. Everybody's proud of our history and our culture, and Kentucky has a very diverse culture, and that's just what I think makes Kentucky special.
And I have to say the Arts Council people certainly realize that the arts and economic development go hand in hand, and this is our 7th session, and the Arts Council people have been represented at every single session that we've been to. So thank you for coming. Yes, Joyce?
I'm Joyce Wilcox from Eastern Kentucky Concentrated Employment Program. Lived in Kentucky my whole life, and I think that some things that makes Kentucky special to me is the scenic beauty that we have here, the natural resources. We have so many natural resources. You know, we have coal, we have natural gas. There's just so much, like Joe said, there's just so much untapped opportunity, really. But my husband's from Ohio, and he moved here 5 years ago, and he said this is the most beautiful. He's been all over, and he said, Joyce, this is one of the most beautiful places I have ever lived, and he loves it here. You know, we take it for granted living here, but you know, I'm just a hill girl. I don't like flatland, so I love Kentucky. And that's why.
Well, I don't live here, but it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. What else? Anything else on that one? Go ahead, flip the next one. We're going to go right into what are the biggest issues facing Kentucky's economic development today. This one over here too.
Denise Thomas, Big Sandy Area Development District. Workforce.
Okay.
Mike Vance with the city of Prestonsburg, and just on to what Denise said, it's workforce development as well as jobs that we could create. Job creation is what we need in our communities.
Okay. Biggest issues facing Kentucky's economic development.
think one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest, is the state can't seem to make up its mind what its position is on coal. We need to get a position on coal, one way or the other, and stick with it. Quite frankly, those of us that are born in East Kentucky, I was born in a coal camp. In fact, I learned to counting coal going out of the camp. But coal has been very good to us, and to now cast it off because of some problems, real or unreal, I don't think is the way to go. I think we need to in your study and in your conclusions to determine if there's life after coal, or is there still life in coal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Terry Trimble with Big Sandy Ad, and probably one of the biggest issues is the availability of developable property and also the challenges of bringing infrastructure through.
So challenges of available property that you can get infrastructure to? And developable, okay.
Hello, my name's Bo Spurlock from Prestonsburg. I'm going to follow up with what a couple of the women in front of me said. One regarding workforce. I had read something a few months ago in a publication that said one of our local counties that the available male workforce, men of working age, that 50% were disabled. And I mean, if that is the case, then we've got a major, major health problem here. I don't think that that is the case. I think that there's a lot of rampant abuse of disability in the area, and when you take such a huge percentage of the population out of the workforce, that you wind up with an area that cannot recover ever. And secondly, as far as developable land, I think that there obviously is a shortage because of just the landscape here being mountainous. There's an awful lot of fallow land here that's been tied up in families that isn't actively being pursued for development purposes, that's been held in families or in trust or whatever for generations, that could be put to better use if there was a concerted effort in the community or region to go after those properties and work with the property owners. So those are two big ones, at least for Eastern Kentucky. It may be different across the state.
Well, on the disabled workforce, that statistic that you mentioned, was that for certain counties in Eastern Kentucky? Was that a...
It mentioned one county specifically,
okay,
and I won't say which one,
okay,
but I wouldn't be surprised if there were similar figures
okay,
for some of the
got
others.
It. Yes.
Hi, I'm Melissa Quillon with the Office of Employment and Training, and I think to add to that, but more specifically transportation in this area, I cover 23 counties in Eastern Kentucky, and it may not be as big of a problem in the other parts of the state, but in this part of the state, transportation to encourage business development as well as transportation to transport your workforce. We have people in areas that can't get to other areas where there may be more jobs available. So I think transportation is a huge issue in this area.
Okay, good one, thank you. What else? Yes, sir.
I'm John Rosenberg from Prestonsburg. Education and economic development go hand in hand. I think we really have to have the assistance of the economic development folks in emphasizing education at all levels in the state. I'd go so far as to encourage you to help us promote the Challenger Center in Hazard and the East Kentucky Science Center in Prestonsburg so that kids who are in this current generation, they're the brains of the future. And we keep talking about Silicon Hollers as well as Silicon Valleys. I think those are realities we can achieve if we can keep promoting education as we need to, especially in math and science.
Okay, thank you. one there, and then there's one over here, Joe. Well, go ahead, you go first.
My name's Bob Kelly. I think one of our greatest weaknesses here is leadership. I'm not talking about just any leadership, but innovative, great leadership at the local level. I've noticed that many regions, some regions, like in East Kentucky, like Pikeville, for instance, they have some strong leaders in their community, the community people. If you look across Eastern Kentucky, there's so many places that doesn't have that leadership. Now, if you've got a good educational base, if you've got some good leaders, they will seek out those businesses and so forth that complement their region or where they can get the most out of that. Those places that have done that, they've had progress and growth in business. But right at the head of it, you've had a strong leader in that community. I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses in Eastern Kentucky. If you look in the Louisville area or in the Triangle, so-called, it seems to be very prosperous. But what you see at the head of that are leaders, and that draws money, that draws the development, and so forth. There are efforts in Eastern Kentucky, like the East Kentucky Leadership Conference, who for years have attempted to develop their own leaders, from within. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges that faces us, is developing that leadership. That is true if you've noticed in foreign countries. Like one person said a few years ago, in World War II, you had the economies in countries like Germany and Japan that was devastated. There was nothing but ashes. And then today, where are the strongest economies around? Those places. But Eastern Kentucky is still there, like those foreign countries. It seems like they've never gotten hope in their economies to come up. Well, it would appear what we did there, we should be able to do here. But back again, I believe that all goes right straight back to having leadership at that local level to take advantage of what's already out there. Now, East Kentucky is blessed with some of the best topography, lakes, streams, and so on like that. I don't think those have been properly exploited. I've noticed like Route 32, for example, there is all along that route, there are several lakes, like Yatesville and Grayson Lake and so forth and so forth. None of those places have really been exploited for tourism, like having lodges and so on and so on. There's never been a real development of those. That is a good start there to complete the development of that 32, okay. Connect those lakes and the tourist possibilities that could come with that, like they do in Tennessee. But again, that goes back to leadership again and what the priorities are. Somebody's got to be down there to push their agenda and see it through. And we just don't have enough of those people. We've got a few, that if we just have more of them,
okay.
The lead is there.
Got it. There's right here, Joe, and then there's two more over here.
Well, concerning workforce development, I'm sure there's issues there, but my experience has been if the jobs are good paying jobs, the people come out. I mean, they're qualified people are there. We had a company in the last 6 to 8 months made an effort to find 35 to 40 qualified people. They had hundreds of applications from qualified people is what they told me.
Because of the wages they were going to pay.
Yeah, they were paying good wages. They were very impressed, actually, above expectations of the workforce.
With the pool that they got?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think a lot of the workforce development issues has to do with pay. And I personally know of no company that couldn't find good qualified people if they were paying a good rate of pay. Now, if you get down lower, then that's maybe another issue. But I do think the workforce development has a lot of issues we could, delve into and try to solve. But I still say a lot of it has to do with the pay the company does. Talking about your question there, though, what's the biggest issues facing Kentucky's economic development? I think expectations. I find I've been doing this now for right at 8 years, eight and a half years, and expectations are different. It's almost like a tangible versus intangible. People want to see results. You've got a plan, you've done it for 6 months. Well, what happened to that plan? In economic development, I'll never forget when I got into this, Governor Patton said, you're going to have to judge this thing on 10, 20, and 30 years intervals. But he didn't tell the community that. He probably told them, they just didn't listen. We've been actively marketing Gateway Business Park for 8 years. We've got 7 businesses there now, active businesses. That, to me, is very successful. But to the community, it's, why don't you have more? And we have goals, and we try to do more, but I do these community presentations. At the end of the presentation, I always end with one little story. I say, if you get in your car and drive 36 miles on the odometer south on US 23, on your right will be an industrial park. It's called Duffield Industrial Park, and it's got dozens of businesses, and it's got hundreds of employees, thousands of employees, actually. And everybody in the audience always says, well, what's the difference? 36 miles south on US 23. I said the difference is they had their vision in the 1970s. 75, I think, is when they started that park. So they've been after it 30-some years, where we've been after it 8 years. In 30-some years, we will have probably 30, 35 businesses in that park. But the expectations are
to fill it up in 5 years.
To fill it up. And, it's almost instant gratification, or whatever you want to call it, drive-through dinner. You get your goods in 2 minutes, or, you want to know why not. So it's part of society and the way we've trained people.
There's probably places you could tell them to drive to, and those industrial parks are still empty, too.
Absolutely.
So, but you
Absolutely.
took the positive angle rather than the other.
But expectations.
It's a good point.
Have
a
a
very
lot
good
to do
point. Got it. Jared,
We have, I'm Jim Brown, I'm a retired banker. We have 2 other natural resources that are underutilized, I think. Natural gas being one of them, in the timber industry is the other. The timber industry in particular, we cut them down and ship them some other place for processing. And there's an opportunity, I think, for some of that timber to be made into products at the local level than us shipping it off to North Carolina or someplace. Natural gas, I think the state could be better supportive of the natural gas industry in utilization for transportation in particular.
Okay, thank you. Jared?
Jared Arnett, the Southeast Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. To add to a little bit what they were talking about as far as workforce goes, the number he quoted earlier, the 50%, we're covering 8 counties, and when we looked at those numbers, we found an average of 52% across those 8 counties with regard to the disability, and not the unemployment numbers, but the true people that are out of the workforce. And my wife's an educator. She teaches at a high school. And education plays directly into that, because the kids that she sees at a high school level are stuck in that cultural transition where they've already got their future decided. And like Joe said, I believe if there's good paying wages that we can change that. I see that as an opportunity. With the number over the 8 counties was a little over 90,000 people. That's a ripe workforce for me that we could tap into if the jobs were here. The second thing is, because of our rural demographics, because of that, we found an unwillingness to work together in different counties and different cities when we really don't have the population in any one certain place to carry the weight to make things happen like in the rest of the state. And we found that as a challenge amongst ourselves, that we end up competing against ourselves rather than uniting together.
How many counties in your organization?
We cover 8 counties.
8 counties, that's right. Okay.
So that's something I see that if we could unite, it's 216,000 people in those 8 counties. You know, if we could work together more on from a business economic development standpoint, with private industry being involved in that, I think we really have a future, can make a big difference.
How long have y'all been working together with those 8 counties?
We just started in May. We made our transition
Good
in
for
May.
you.
So
okay. Good.
And then the third thing is something we're looking at is the perception that the rest of the state, the rest of the country has with their area. It's not always marketed the way that it should be, and we've never really got to tell our own story. And that's really something as a chamber that we're looking at doing, is changing the perception for the rest of the state, to change it, like Joe said, to see us as an opportunity, because we really believe we have a lot of untapped resources here that the state could take advantage of and be a big part of. And we believe that we can contribute a great part to the state.
Okay, thank you. Got it, here's one. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Burl Spurlock. I'm from Prestonsburg. Follow up on a comment of this gentleman over here about leadership in our region. I think we've got ups and downs in our elected leadership, but there's no way for leaders to pool their efforts together. I know there's frequently meetings at the various ad districts where the elected leaders do get together. But we're the third, I think Kentucky has the third largest number of counties in the United States behind Georgia and Texas. In eastern Kentucky, we've seen just in the 2010 census a decline in population. And the concerns are that that trend will continue for the next generation. So I guess my thought is that there needs to be some incentives created for counties to begin to think about how to consolidate their resources and their leadership. Gentleman referred to Europe, Western Europe. Many of those countries, such as Germany, had principalities that it took effective leadership, this has been 150 years ago, to consolidate those principalities into one effective government. And not to offend anybody, but many of our counties are little principalities, and very difficult to break down that political process in order to get some consolidation and combine leadership. I think some thought should be given to what kind of incentives we could put together, or could be put together, to consolidate the political process, consolidate the counties.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I want to, I guess, reinforce a lot that's been said. I speak to employers and applicants on a weekly basis, and what I hear from employers is it is hard for me to keep, good help and dependable workers. But on the applicant side, they're saying it's not worth my while to go out for what they want to pay. The distance that I have to travel and no benefits. So there has to be a combination of employers and applicants working together to make that better. Plus, I think that we really need to work on giving incentives, like was said, to the persons that are trying. I hear all the time, well, if I take a job for that much and work that many hours, then I lose this, or my child loses their card, or so I really think that we need to work on rewarding the persons that are trying rather than, taking away. So it's going to be a combination of everybody working together.
And your comment is a good segue into the next question. So what must happen, and you've had some good ideas, to secure Kentucky's future for high-wage, high-value jobs. Realizing there are 120 counties and realizing the definition of high-wage, high-value job may be different depending on where you are in the Commonwealth. But what must happen? You said, I guess, a partnership between the companies and the workforce.
And even the state, like I said, let's give incentives to the persons that are trying, rather than, that are actually can contribute to the economy and the community, rather than, I guess smacking their hands if they do try, to make it actually worth their while to come out. I mean, we all know that we have to have a job, but I can see sometimes when persons are saying, well, I have to think of my children and they're going to lose their insurance if I do better myself, when it's only a minimum wage job and they only maybe get to work 20 hours a week, or sometimes they get 40. And I think that employers are going to have to start realizing, just like the persons that are saying, I can't come out, with gas at $3.65 to $3.75 a gallon, and they're making $7.25 an hour, but then they only get, 1 week they'll get 20 hours to work, 1 week they might get 40, but then they're back to, it's not consistent. And I think that we need to recognize those needs and address them, as a state, as an employer, and as, employees also.
Okay. What else? What must happen? Anything else? Yes, Jared. I'm gonna make a comment here. It is, in this group of people, there are a lot of people in here that are a lot younger than I am, and that is good to see. I mean, in not every location we've been to have we seen young people that took the time, and there are young people that are in key positions, and that's good to see in this room, and I appreciate your comments.
I think
the older people too, like me, but I just want to say I'm acknowledging that there are some young people in this room that are participating in this process, and that's good to see.
I think to add what she said, I had an employee one time that declined raise after raise because his wife was in school, and if he earned another $1 a year, he was going to lose his benefits, his health insurance for his kids. And I think there's got to be incentives to work and do better. And it's such a big leap to get from that position that so many people are trapped in. You got to make so much money to get out of it that it's really a trap for them. So I don't know how you do that, but I think that somehow that's got to be changed to give people incentives to work and not incentives to stay home.
Someone said they agreed. I'm hearing comments. A couple of amens. I understand what that means. Yes, Joe? She's bringing a mic to you.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but, some people say the way you create a successful business is you find a need and you fill it. Everybody's heard that. That's a successful business. Well, for us to be successful to secure high-wage, high-value jobs in the 21st century, we're going to have to connect better with those companies that have a need and that we can fill it here in eastern Kentucky. We can have, and in the state of Kentucky, I should say, we can have the most beneficial place in the world, the most beautiful place in the world. If nobody knows about it, if nobody's connected with it, if we don't know those people are out there, then it's going to be to no avail. But if we, and I find in my efforts, the hardest part is connecting with these companies or places that have a need to where I can actually get to talk to them. You have to start somewhere. And, in the long run, that should be a lot of your all's focus. I mean, we can market Kentucky, we can do all these different things, but until we sit down with the people that's got the capital to invest in our area, we're not accomplishing a whole lot. But I just feel like we need to focus and center on whatever it takes to find those companies. And right now, in my instance, it's mostly energy companies that have the capital and have the need to expand or relocate or whatever the case may be. But until we connect with those people, we can talk all day long and you're not going to accomplish a lot. That question there, I'd like to hear Governor Patton's take on that question. He's my mentor, and he's the man. I wouldn't even have a Gateway Park if it wasn't for Governor Patton. And I'd like to have his input on that question.
I would never put you on the spot, but he just did, so take him the mic.
Well, I've committed to not say too much, but I think making a lot of good points. I can say one of the problems is the high wages paid in the coal industry. Now, as it applies to attracting other industries, they can't compete with the coal industry because of high wages. Fundamentally, it's education. The fundamental problem, and I speak of Eastern Kentucky. But that's applicable to a lot of other Kentucky, and we're making great progress. You can't turn a battleship around in a day. You can't solve 100 years of neglect in 10 years. But I think what his comments about the Gateway is, and the other parks is, those were 50-year investments. And you're right. We built a little Mossy Bottom Park down here. And people, well, we haven't done anything with it. And they ended up putting what's essentially retail businesses in it. Retail businesses will show up if we have the demand for the retail. If they have to be here, they'll be here. It's a fundamental principle, in my point, of building the economy of any entity, whether it's a family, a company, a community, or a state, is to attract activity that where you're producing something that you can export out of the region for a price, so you'll have the money to buy the things that you have to buy from outside the region, which is about 95% of everything we buy or any place else. Most any entity imports a whole lot more of a percentage of its stuff. So somewhere you have to replace that money. And you do it by producing something that you can export from the region, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's intellectual production, educational services, whatever. So when I start looking at growing the economy of a family, the wealth of a family, the family has to bring in more money than it spends if it's going to accumulate wealth. Same thing with a company. If they're going to be profitable, they have to bring in more money for the product that they sell than they send out to buy the things that they use to make the product. The same principle applies to growing the economy of a community or a state. Some way or the other, we have to export more from the entity for a price than we have to purchase from outside the entity if we're going to accumulate wealth. So that's principles that I've operated on, but in the end it is education. I will make another statement. When you have low-skilled, low-skilled, low-educated people, you will either have low-wage, low-skilled jobs, or you'll have welfare. Now, in the 70s, in this region, we had one of the greatest economic booms that any of us have ever seen. We had high-wage, high-skilled jobs in demand. Didn't have enough people to fill them. Population of this region increased by 15, 20%. And we still had that level of poverty that didn't change much, because we still had the low-skilled, low-educated people that couldn't do the jobs that were being created. So you got to look at reality. If you've got a low-skilled person, they will have a low-skilled, low-wage job, or they won't have a job at all. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. They say, well, we ought to pursue high-wage jobs. Sure, you ought to pursue high-wage jobs for high-skilled people. But as long as you have a large population of low-skilled people, you have to pursue low-skilled jobs. I could talk a long time, but I committed to myself I wasn't going to do that.
We're glad you did. Yes.
Okay. Is this on? Yes. Have to hold it closer. I'm Jim England. I'm treasurer of the Southeast Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. I want to elaborate a little bit on what Jared started. We worked for several months on, actually years, on this regional concept of a chamber to cover eastern Kentucky. In May, we announced the establishment of that organization to cross county lines and blend together with businesses in our region for economic development and to provide better jobs, better lives for all 216,000 people in our area. Rather than being divided by our county lines, we can come together to work with our legislators and county officials to accomplish our goals. We have found that county governments and legislators focus on their county or their district. And if it's not good for Pike County, I'm not going to help get it located in Letcher County. We've seen this happen time and time again. So the chamber decided that we needed to move beyond that and look at regionalism like the Golden Triangle. Bowling Green is a great example of what has happened in the state of Kentucky by Bowling Green starting economic development 501c3. They've taken in, I think, 8 or 9 counties, and you can see how that area has grown. That is, we're not trying to invent something new. We're just copying what other areas have done. And one thing we're working on right now is commercial air service. The city, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Airport Board have been working now for over a year to try to establish commercial air service at our regional airport. The college needs it. The hospital needs it. There's a lot of businesses that have told us that they want and need commercial air service, and we get we keep trying. We're getting closer all the time. Somewhere in one of Brad Hall is our president of our chamber, and he's out in L.A. today, so I'm filling in for him. I'd rather be out there and him be here.
Is that Los Angeles or Lower Alabama?
Lower Alabama,
oh,
yeah. I lost my the train pulled out and left me sitting here.
He's at the American Chamber of Commerce Executives
Yes.
Conference. Is where he
Yes,
is
that's
in
where he's
LA.
at.
Yeah.
Kentucky is the 3rd largest manufacturer of automobiles in the United States. With the Corvette plant, the Toyota plant, the Ford plant, but there is not one business in eastern Kentucky that supports the auto industry. What we would like to see is a manufacturer of bumpers or any business that would support the auto industry be built here in eastern Kentucky. It doesn't have to be in Pike County, McGoffin County. There's people every day driving from McGoffin County to Georgetown. You pass them on the Mountain Parkway driving these old state police cars. And you have to slow down because you're not sure whether it is actually a state policeman
yesterday.
or a carload of people going back and forth to the Toyota plant. We need to develop a business that works with the auto industry. We also need to 4-lane the Mountain Parkway. I mean, that's been an issue for years. It's quicker to get to Charleston or Bristol than it is to Lexington. And there's no reason that can't be done. I know the money, but you know it needs to be done. For us to be connected to Central Kentucky, the Mountain Parkway needs to be completed. So you know that is our vision of Eastern Kentucky, is by developing this new chamber so that we can all work together to better serve the people of Eastern Kentucky. Thank you.
Is this new chamber, regional chamber, is it working? Or is it still too early to tell?
I mean, we've only been around since May.
Right.
There are issues. We have established, well, Tracy is our new chairman.
We've added about 20 new businesses out in the county since May, but we had before we started the effort, we probably had 30 or 40 businesses that were already outside of our county. Those counties have really, those businesses have really embraced it. They see the vision behind it. We're fighting against a lot of the cultural things I talked about earlier, ties to our own communities. I'm from from McGoffin County. I live in Floyd County and I work in Pike County. So I see the regionalism, and I know I don't drive a retired state police car, though I will say that after Jimmy's comments. But we see the challenges, and it's something our board is holding tight to, and they really see the benefit in the business, and see the benefit, and we're working it every day out in those counties.
Okay. Right here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would just add, and I guess I'm sort of new to.
Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to add, Mike Vance from the city of Prestonsburg again, and I'm kind of new to doing economic development, although I've done it for a few years in other ways. One of the problems and one of the things that needs to happen in Kentucky, I just left a job a few months ago at a children's center over at Buckhorn that's been in business since 1902, serving abused and neglected children in this Commonwealth for that whole time. During that time, I got familiar with other children's centers in Kentucky. All have suffered in the past 4 or 5 years. They have suffered because of the lack of coordination, at least from that cabinet that controls those services. And see, I think this part of Eastern Kentucky in particular is very strictly, there's a lot of service-based stuff that goes on here, but the wages for those kinds of things are not nearly as good as some of the other things like the governor talked about with coal mining and that kind of thing. And what you run into is you cannot provide, jobs that are competing, but at the same time, because of kind of a lack of some kind of, permission for people to do the services, newer for-profit agencies come in and kind of raid the business of existing business. And what I'm getting at is if there could be some coordination at the state level, collaboration, coordination, whatever you want to call it, that would allow, the cabinets that are doing the services to actually coordinate through economic development the impact of some of their decisions upon a local economy. If you shut down a children's program in a county such as Wolfe County, which we had to do at one time, thank God we got it back open, there were 73 jobs gone. And it was strictly an economic decision that had to be made. And there was very little help. There was help from local government to get reopened, but there wasn't a lot of help from the state. And I would like to see some mechanism whereby the service industry, those that are doing human services in the state, would get a little more support in what they're doing and maybe strengthen the position of those kinds of agencies as opposed to making decisions that weaken them. And that's, like I said, that's kind of, I've got a double-billed hat on there, a cap, but I'm just speaking from experience. 30 years before that, I worked for a comprehensive care center, community mental health. they have some of the same problems. So there's not a lot of coordination in the upper reaches of Kentucky's cabinets. And I would have to say it was better for us under Governor Patton. It was kind of after that we began to have some of our problems. But there doesn't seem to be discussions going on between the leadership in the service cabinets and the economic development folks, and they can make a decision that has a major economic impact on a community.
I know everybody comes at these types of things from their background and their standpoint, and my background is not economic development. But it would seem to me that if education is the key, and one of the largest populations that we have in most of these counties that we all serve in or live in is the working poor, that we would, you know, tie in some of these things that we've all been talking about with the incentives, where you have families who sort of can't get over the hump that they're in. To move forward with education, some more opportunities, because if you look at grants, if you look at scholarships, if you look at any sort of financial aid, it's all income-based. Any sort of assistance is income-based. So you fall into a situation with so many families that they're $6 over an opportunity to receive, you know, $2,000 in financial assistance. You know, they make $6 more, they make $5 more, they make $20 more. So that's not an incentive to move forward. It's an incentive to stay where you are. Mm-hmm. So of the families that are working poor, of the families that are moving and trying to grow themselves and grow their wealth, if they were able to have some other opportunities through education that were made available to meet their income guidelines, you know, if education is the key, then to increase their education, to increase their opportunity, to me, that would seem to be the key, especially if that's one of the larger populations that we work with, or that is in the communities that we see.
Okay. Can you?
One of the issues that's not been talked about here today, I know it's true in Pike County, I'm not sure in the other counties, but it's affordable housing. There's a shortage of affordable housing. When you have someone want to relocate to this area, and when they come in and look at what housing is available and what it's going to cost, is a real issue.
Okay. Got it. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Most people, if they're looking to come to this area, after looking at transportation, education, they look at recreation. How are they going to recreate in this region? The outdoor activities are in a perfect spot, but what about some of the other things? The end.
There's two here, Eston and Jean.
I'm a veterinarian from Hazard, Kentucky. I just came back to Kentucky, and the biggest, or one of the big issues I see is the values of people in eastern Kentucky. Coal miners, I give a lot of respect to coal miners. It takes a lot of nerve to do that every day. But I don't want to see my nephews and my nieces, and I don't think any father or mother here wants to see their family going down into the mines. And I'm going to argue with Patton a little bit here. The education level required to be a coal miner is not that high. If I know miners that don't have their GED, can barely read and write, and they're mining coal, and they're making a fortune at it, $40,000, $60,000, and there's no other job that can compete with that. And the young people see this as Daddy can afford his F-250, and we can buy that new car, and he can't read and write. And that goes back to the education system. You have to give children values and something higher to pursue. But coal mines is the only way to go right now. And I thank God that they're here, or Eastern Kentucky wouldn't be on the map without them. And the values of health care, I don't know what it is, but obesity is high in Eastern Kentucky. And you get people that's abusing the system They don't want to work. And when young children see that, well, we're doing fine and mommy's not working or daddy's not working and we're doing fine. And they learn to value cheating the system versus going out and getting a higher education. And I think a good way to solve that problem would be to start drug testing. If you're on state-funded assistance, mandatory drug testing before you receive that.
Okay. Jean?
My name is Jean Rosenberg, and I'm from Floyd County. And I need to add into the equation, if you really want to know what must happen to secure Kentucky's future for high-wage and high-value jobs in the 21st century, I really want to turn the spotlight on early childhood education. I feel very strongly that your self-image is formed, and by the time you reach kindergarten even, and if you feel you're at a deficit and all the other kids know things that you don't, you're going to approach education and your whole future from a deficit. And I've seen a lot of folks who could use that support at an early age. Thank you.
Thank you. Bo.
Hi there, Bo Spurlock from Prestonsburg again. I don't know where to start. I could talk a lot about a lot of different things that we've kind of touched on here. I guess I'd like to second Jean Rosenberg's comment on early childhood education. I think I've got a child in preschool and a child getting ready to go into first grade in Prestonsburg, and you can already see the separation of the kids who are getting it and the kids who aren't. And I know there's a lot of kids that go to school with my children that have very, very troubled backgrounds, and it's really tough and will only get tougher as they progress to dig out of that hole. On a couple of other things that haven't really been touched on, I think a lot of the gaming of the system and some of the idleness of part of the population with disability and some other things that aren't bona fide disabled winds up, when you have a percentage of the population that's idle, it's very conducive to fill your time with drug abuse. And that is obviously a major issue in this area, which I think affects the workforce, the available pool of people who can work. On a separate subject, I think it's very important there was always a push when I was in school to go to college. That was what you had to do. I mean, for my entire class, you had to go to college. Well, there were a lot of kids that were with me that graduated that went off to college and were back in a semester, and then they were in the workforce, at 18 years old, and they never wound up going any further than that. And I think it's very important to make sure that you have a community and technical college support available to them that will offer industries and educational opportunities in fields that respond to the current markets, that can train them effectively to compete not only in Kentucky but throughout the country, and not have a stigma on the people who do not go to college, because there's a range of educational opportunities that isn't at a university level that would benefit the entire population. And then I guess lastly, one of the things that I've heard in a lot of community development meetings and things like that throughout the state and the country is that you have a large percentage of people who, instead of following a job to an area, will go to an area that they want to live in and then find a way to start a business or do a job. If somebody wants to operate, live, in a shack on a beach in Hawaii, they'll go there and then figure out a way to make it work. And so you have to have a community that is attractive to people, where they want to live, want to have family, and you'll have a certain percentage of people who will start businesses in those areas. And then the other thing is to capture. I think Eastern Kentucky's greatest export has been its people. I mean, we have sent people outside of the area to all over Kentucky and all over the country and the world, and it's been a major brain drain for the past, ever since we've existed. But I think that, a lot of people have said Kentucky has great, the people are great, we have great scenery and everything else. So does Tennessee, so does Virginia, so does North Carolina. I think it's got to come from within. We have to culture our people, our hometown folks that are raised here to come back into the area after they've received an education and create the communities that they want to see. And you've got to find out ways to get the people back, because nobody is going to champion Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky specifically like someone who's from this area. You're not going to get somebody, you're going to get plenty of people from outside the area that love the area, but the key is getting the people who are born and raised here to go to bat for the region. Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Jared.
I'll just say a few more things on the education. This is my own personal thoughts, but once you get to high school student level, you can separate them into two different groups. One group of kids that know they're going to go to college, and they've always been told they're going to go to college by their parents, and that's their plan, and they know it. And then the group that has no intentions of ever going to college, their mom and dad have never mentioned it to them, and there's no influence at home to steer them in that direction. And I think those group of kids are really what we got to focus on. We either got to find a way to give them some form of motivation or support, or outside of the school system. We see all these new programs being pushed down from the state on the educators and changing the standards and all these processes. And lots of times my wife deals with so many problems before she can even start talking about Romeo and Juliet. I mean, that's the farthest things from those kids' minds. And somehow that's got to be changed outside the school system. And it starts at home and early childhood development, just like she said. And either that, or we got to have jobs for those kids when they get out of college, or when they get out of high school, if they don't further their education, that pays more than the welfare benefits they can find that they're in the lifestyle of.
Very well said. Governor Patton.
All right, let me weigh in on that one. Education is the key, and our elementary and secondary education systems have to get better. But those are foundational education programs. The vocational, the occupational, the education that really results in high-class productivity is your post-secondary education. And as I think's already been mentioned, if our children, if we get our bright children, our people that are really going to succeed in life, if they go to Lexington, like my 3 children have, and they get educated in Lexington, they get used to that lifestyle, they get married, they have children, they stay in Lexington, and they grow the economy of Lexington. Now here's the commercial. That's the reason that institutions like the community college here in Prestonsburg and Whitesburg and Hazard and the University of Pikeville are so important. If we take our bright people and they get educated here, they're going to be productive wherever they end up. Wherever they end up, they're going to produce. But if we get educated here and they stay here, they'll produce here and grow our economy. And that's what we have to do. I mean, we got lots of examples, from Gene Hale to Terry Dodson to a lot of other people that got their education, Gene Davis, that got their education at, it was Pikeville College. I can get by with saying that now. They stayed here and they produced our economy. So, I mean, I think that this is one of the things that we as a community need to do. We need to make the University of Pikeville an institution where the best and the brightest that really want our unique culture, and we've got a unique culture. It doesn't appeal to everybody, but it appeals to most of us. We'd really rather stay here, but we're not willing to sacrifice economically. So if we can combine that desire, a couple of things that the people of Eastern Kentucky have kept that many of the nation has lost is attachment to family and place. And this highly mobile society. I've got a sister in Oregon and a sister in Maryland, and that's a part of it. But most of the people that stay here want to be here, and they may go to Oregon, but they'd really like to come back. So it's the medical school is the greatest example. Get them from the mountains, train them in the mountains, they'll stay in the mountains, and they'll grow healthcare in the mountains. And that applies to whether it's our Masters of Business Administration program that we're starting. This is really a commercial. but if we take our business people and we give them that higher level of education here, they will grow the economy here. So that's my commercial.
I think it's a good one. Yes. I don't think we're going to have to ask any more questions. Y'all just going to keep talking. That's a good thing.
I do think that our people want to stay here, and they're very frustrated when they cannot find jobs here, especially if they do have the education. And I had an employer actually this week in our office that is from Canada, and he recruits all over the country for minors to go to Canada. And he said out of all the places that he has recruited and hired people, that he keeps coming back here because he has found that these were the best experienced, best workers that he has hired for Canada. So not only are we losing them to Oregon or other states or counties, but now it's they can even leave the country. So I think our people do want to be here, so we do have to provide those jobs. And I've heard a lot about manufacturing. I think that's very important. That's something that we could do here in our region also. As of right now, we have one factory. I have people calling the office at least once a week wanting to know if that factory is accepting applications. And when they do accept applications, I usually have standing room only in the office for people to try to get on at that company.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Yes, sir.
I'm Pat. I'm a field representative for Congressman Rogers in 18 counties in the eastern 5th Precinct. I think we need a great, we need a greater realization. We're all in this together. In the eastern part of the 5th Congressional District, East Kentucky, as has been pointed out, we've got counties that are small, they're poor, and they're isolated even more so than the rest. They've got to come along, or the areas that are bright spots, of which we're sitting in one today, they'll be limited too, unless we can bring these other counties along. But also, the Commonwealth, the whole Commonwealth has got things, obviously, and it always has and will have, things it needs to work on. It's going to be limited. The rest of the Commonwealth needs to understand Kentucky's going to be limited because their future, too, depends on East Kentucky. And East Kentucky's future depends on the rest of the Commonwealth. We're all in this together. It's a daunting challenge, but we've got a lot of good things going. And we just need to work harder. Leadership, local leadership is the key, there's no doubt. That's just a half-a-cent opinion, I guess.
Well said. Are there other programs or initiatives that you've seen happening in other states, or that you've read about, or that you've witnessed, that you would like to see emulated in the Commonwealth of Kentucky? Yes, sir.
I think we have a huge aging population here, and if you spend time in North Carolina, you'll see that they've really focused on retirement communities for all levels of income. And we have, I think there have been a number of studies in the region to try to see whether we can support assisted living communities of that sort, or whether we can't, whether it's a profit venture or not. But I think that as we look down the road, Eastern Kentucky, just like a lot of other parts of the state, are going to have a growing, aging population, and we really have to look at how we can make that population comfortable and want to stay here and have a high quality of life. And finding, even though the history of the region is an awful lot of people, a lot of families take their parents back in, but a lot more don't these days. And we really don't have very many institutional settings for those people. I think it's also a possibility for economic development in the future. There are a lot of profit-making chains that are in the country. It's a lot harder to do it in a rural area, but I do think that's one of the areas that we really need to look at.
So services for the aging population.
Yes.
Okay.
And communities like assisted living facilities. This is a beautiful area where we live in.
Right.
And places like North Carolina have just really promoted those opportunities.
Got it. Programs in other states or things you've seen happening in other states that you'd like to mention, that you think, you know what, we ought to at least look at that and see if that could work in Kentucky.
I have to say tourism. You know, West Virginia and four-wheeling and mountain trails, and it brings a lot of money in, and I take a lot of my money out of here to go there and enjoy those mountains when they're right here in our backyard, and there are so many problems, liability issues and those kinds of things, that there's a lot of land and a lot of mountains that could be utilized for tourism, but there seems to be so many obstacles in the way that we can't move forward with it.
Okay.
Communities that have research facilities, either governmental or tied to universities, do very well. We need to look as a state at what research facilities that could be located in the Commonwealth. And since I'm in Eastern Kentucky, specifically in Eastern Kentucky.
Okay. What else? Tracy, let's go to 13. Back to 13. Back to 13. No, the other one. Went up. That's it. That's it. I don't have a clicker, so I'm having to rely on her to click it for me, too. That one. In an ideal world, the Commonwealth of Kentucky will accomplish blank by 2016 from an economic development perspective. What will Kentucky accomplish by 2016 in an ideal world?
My name's Jeff Holman. I'm with East Kentucky Power. We don't actually serve this area, but what I would like to see is serious energy efficiency by 2016. A blight in Eastern Kentucky is the manufactured housing that's substandard. People buy a home with an electric furnace that costs them 5 times what a heat pump costs. It's poorly insulated. They think they're going to pay $300 a month, and their electric bill is $500 in the winter. That money, I'd rather see it spent in the community than I would wasting it on energy that they don't have to use that way. And we just see a lot of that, and it's heartbreaking. But so I'd like to see, if you purchase a manufactured home, that's what you decide to do on the lot, that it's an Energy Star manufactured home. If you buy a house, that it's well insulated and has energy efficiency so that people don't waste money, so they can put it into other things.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think the what would help a great deal is if the Commonwealth could accomplish full employment for the workforce in the state. I think it would cure a lot of ills. It would permit people to attend school and have the finances to do it with. I think it would cut down on crime. And I worked for a federal agency for about 38 years and had the opportunity to see a lot of statistics. And there is a direct correlation to the number of people who file for disability and unemployment. If there is good employment, meaning good jobs with good pay, these people are somehow miraculously cured because they go to work, pay them more money. And I think that ought to be a goal. Besides that, it will put more taxes in the coffer. And the state likes to have lots of taxes in the coffers.
Okay. Thank you. What else? Right here.
The Kentucky Arts Council again. In an ideal world, I would like to see Kentucky become a top tourist destination where people from all across the country would want to come here, especially Eastern Kentucky. Other people have talked about how beautiful it is here, the quality of the people here, the culture, and I don't think that that's being publicized enough. I think that's a treasure that people across the country are missing.
Okay. Thank you. What else?
I'm Burl Spurlock, Prestonsburg. This is a sacred cow, but it's something that might help level the playing field a little for Kentucky with some of our sister states. But I'd like to see Kentucky become a right-to-work state.
Okay. What else by 2016, an ideal world?
In an ideal world, I'd like to see Kentucky's environment maintain habitability. I'm worried about our water supply, and I'm very worried about our air quality, both of which are components of living.
Okay. What else? In an ideal world, what would be happening in Kentucky by 2016, 5 years from now? Well, if you are going to quit talking, I'm going to quit talking and let Larry talk some more. Thank you very much for your participation.
Only for a second. I mean, it's been fascinating, really, to sit back and listen, and the energy that you can feel. You know, there's so many things. I mean, a couple of 3 different times, Governor, I was moved to be able to get up and amen, and moved to get up and try to amplify on some of the remarks and the comments that were made. The one thing I'll say, I mean, it really isn't us against them. You know, I'm a city slicker in the sense that I live in Louisville, Kentucky, but, you know, my roots are really in central Kentucky and small town Kentucky. And I'll tell you something, when I lived in Springfield, Kentucky, and when I was a young guy, city manager of Springfield, Kentucky, and didn't know a whole lot, as some of our other city managers in the room know, you learn by doing and being around. Van after van after van from central Kentucky, from Columbia, from Lebanon, from Springfield. All we had was Calvin Manufacturing had one garment manufacturing plant there. People were vanning into Louisville to the Ford plant at the time and to General Electric at Appliance Park, which employed 21,000 people at the height. You know, General Electric Appliance Park went down to almost nothing. You know, it's now back up to 4,000 or so. What a travesty for those people that was their career. One of the things that happened, those communities that I just described now have 200 and 300 and 400 employee manufacturing operations, some of them related to the automotive industry. Those people that you have who want to live in your area, who are in those ex-state police cars, if you will, driving to Georgetown, Kentucky, are a real asset to your communities. Those are the people that are getting some of the best training in advanced manufacturing anywhere in the world. Those are people that are attached to your area. Those are the people that may not have the vision for how they can be part of creating a bumper manufacturer, if you will, somebody used that. But they have the skill set to be able to help transfer that to other people that are their friends and neighbors in their community. What it really takes is us thinking about how we can play to our strengths. We've talked about the beauty of the region. we've talked about and we lament the fact that people go away to get that training. You know, it wasn't somebody in federal government or state government that had the vision for putting a medical school at Pikeville University, the University of Pikeville, Governor. It wasn't somebody that did that. I recall sitting in a restaurant, Vietnam Kitchen in Louisville, Kentucky, 4 or 5 years ago. The parents, first generation from Vietnam. They had 2 of the smartest young men that went to public schools in this state. Their son, who would bust the tables at lunchtime, was coming over to our table, and he said he was applied to medical school, and he'd been accepted at U of L and the University of Kentucky, and he was going to Pikeville. I said, why would you be going to medical school in Pikeville? This boy could have gone anywhere. He visited up here with a friend. He really didn't know he was interested, and he ended up graduating for your medical school, Governor. He didn't stay in eastern Kentucky. He's back in Louisville, Kentucky. What I would suggest to you is a real ambassador for what this region has to offer, because you've exported an excellent education. It wasn't somebody from Frankfurt, and it wasn't somebody from Washington that had that vision for that medical school over there. That was an idea that you all generated, and we just hitchhiked and partnered with. You know, you look at the medical center here. My friend Bill Harris, I told Governor Patton earlier, probably the best cardiologist in this state, in my judgment. And he lives here, and he practices and is creating that practice. The affiliation that your hospital has in their heart program, I mean, it's world class. They're attached to the institute up in Cleveland, and you know, the Cleveland Clinic. It's a world-class institution right here in Pikeville, Kentucky. That wasn't somebody from our cabinet, or wasn't somebody from state government. It wasn't somebody of the federal government that had that vision and built that program. So what we are is really a bridge to being able to try to create that opportunity with the resources that state government has available. I would challenge all of us here, all of us including our cabinet, the other cabinets that aren't here, education, the governor's exactly right. Fundamentally, everything gets back to that. That has nothing to do with my cabinet in terms of us resources or the ability for us to create policy. But we need to coordinate workforce development. I mean, that's a separate cabinet. Tourism is a separate cabinet. We need to do a much better job of being able to align the resources of all of our cabinets behind a vision, but that vision really needs to be your all's vision for what will work in this region. So to that extent, thanks for coming, and it's been you know, a great opportunity for us to hear what's on your mind and your visions, and I promise you we'll be back and we'll stay engaged. Thanks a bunch.